Namaste to all. So, the topic for this weekend is on leadership, partly because the Bhagavad Gita has a particular definition and understanding of leadership, the concept of leadership, that is not to be missed, even though we miss it constantly because we take it for granted. We take the lessons of the Bhagavad Gita for granted. And since the Bhagavad Gita is more famous than we are, it's very easy to take the lessons for granted because it's very universally well known. And as soon as anyone starts to talk about topics or concepts such as karma yoga, and even before it is talked about, what happens? There is a certain glossing over that takes place as soon as the word karma yoga is even uttered. Because I know. Karma yoga means what? Doing what you have to do, and then having equanimity, and I know. So there is a certain way in which everybody becomes an expert on the Bhagavad Gita without really assimilating deeply what it has to say. And so it's important to study this definition on leadership for two reasons, I said. One is because one takes for granted the message of the Gita, and since this message is so universal and popular, one feels like one already knows it. And when you have something that you feel like you already know, the listening stops. Because already I know. So I can tune out, I can check out, and I'll come back when something, more important is going to be talked about. I was invited to give a series of lectures somewhere once. I forget where, but one of these cities in the US. And then, I arrived there and they asked me, what topic are you planning to talk about? And I said, Bhagavad Gita, perhaps Karma Yoga. Oh, no. We don't want Bhagavad Gita. Arey? What's wrong with Bhagavad Gita? It's a treasure. It's a treasure box of wonderful teachings that have been culled from the Upanishads, from the Shastra. I said, no. We want Mahavakya. We want you to expound Mahavakya, and Gita doesn't have Mahavakya. Bhagavad Gita has no Mahavakya. Mahavakya means the kernel of the teachings that talk about the oneness of the Jiva, the self, with Bhagavan, Ishvara. So since it is talking about that oneness, that is what I want. I don't want all this karma yoga. Who wants this karma yoga, karma, korma? Forget all that. We want this. And I looked at the audience. I said, this is what is going to lead you to that. And I stuck to my topic and started to just talk about whatever I had come there to talk about. So this is just an example of how, one takes the message for granted. And two things. One is, whatever the Bhagavad Gita has to say, I already know, number one. And number two, it's like, it's not as important as the Upanishad. The Upanishad is where the cream of the whole Vedanta lies, and that's where we have to talk about Satyam and Mithya. Big topics: Satyam, Mithya. What else? Mahavakya, and things like Adhyasa, Aropa. All these things. Superimposition, and what is reality, the status of what is real, and what is absolute, what is relative, what is empirical. All these things we should talk about. And the perception is that the Bhagavad Gita does not address these issues. The Bhagavad Gita only addresses a few little things, how to live one's life, and the Bhagavad Gita makes you act. It's a treatise of action, another misperception. A frequent misperception is that it's a treatise of action, and a very big misperception, I already know what it has to say, and therefore, I am not that interested. I want the real stuff. I want the real thing, which is the Upanishad and the message of the Bhagavad Gita. It's been oft heard. By whom? Where did you listen to it? Did you go to a Swami? Did you go to a Mahatma? No. I just I just read about it. And so the kind of a nonchalant attitude, makes this teaching all the more relevant right now, because it's an opportunity to listen to its message from yet another angle, from yet another standpoint, and to see how it applies to my life in the contemporary times is the second reason why we are focusing on this topic. Because these days, whether I read the newspapers or some kind of opinion or editorial, or hear people talking in conversations, a frequent phrase that I keep coming across is this: there is a crisis of leadership. Globally speaking, and speaking country-wise, speaking community-wise, this is a phrase that is very, 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 very commonly heard, especially these days. Crisis of leadership, meaning that there is a big crisis because the leaders don't know what they're doing. And that's why we are having things like what happened in Manchester, and all these terrorist attacks and these big networks and everything, because it's a statement on ineffectual leadership. Many people think this. That is why these things are happening. And then you go, from country to country, and everywhere there seems to be some way in which the people, and the name in Sanskrit for that is praja, the subjects. The subjects are very disappointed. I mean, that includes all of us. We are all disappointed. Why? Because the newspaper is so depressing. There is violence, pestilence, disease, death, and then certain programs have been cut. Some people are disappointed because their favorite programs, I'm not talking of TV programs, I'm talking of, statewide, community-based, programs, have been defunded. Certain other people are upset because their leader, whether the person was nominated or elected, did not do what they wanted them to do. And, so the leader is disappointing. Some other people are upset because the state of affairs with, inflation and, is and violence, etc., is enough to get one's hopes completely deflated. So, this crisis of leadership is a very kind of a universally felt uh, disappointment as far as the jivas or the individuals, the praja goes, the subjects of any country. And for this reason, it's a very, I thought it would be a useful or an appropriate topic to study right now, so that we can delve into the Gita, into the Bhagavad Gita, to see what this crisis is all about. And more importantly, what is the resolution for this crisis? How do we go about, healing from this, from being subject to this crisis? And so, for these reasons, I thought it would be a very useful thing to talk about this concept of leadership according to the Bhagavad Gita. And so we are going to have about, I think, a total of 6 classes. They give a certain boost to one's study if one is studying regularly. And if one is incapable of studying regularly, then it is a short enough time to re-familiarize ourselves with the study and then get some, get everything that one wanted out of regular study, to just get it in a short burst. And so, so these are all wonderful ways to keep in touch with the Shastra, and also get a little recharged. Just like you have to plug in the phone for a certain number of hours, and then after that the battery goes up and the phone you can use again to do your business. Now the phone does everything now, It may not make coffee yet, but it tells you where to go. So like this, where to go for the nearest cup of coffee, it will tell you. So like this, if we juxtapose whatever the phone does to the status of the individual, so same thing, there is need to, plug the person into the source. You plug the phone into the source, and the source is the electricity that charges the phone, and then it is fresh, ready to use again. And so too, when the mumukshu, the seeker of freedom, jignasu, the desirer of knowledge, and the individual who is floundering or worried about the crisis of leadership, that individual, is plugged into the source, and the source is Bhagavan, and the outlet is the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is the little outlet, yeah. And it's a universal outlet, not like our outlets. If you go from country to country, you need some adapters. Funny looking outlets will be there. Funny means because you don't recognize it. That's why funny. For the people in that country, that is how the outlet should look like. But for you, you think it's funny, ha ha ha, it's like this, it's like, it looks funny. But then you have to take out one adapter and then put that. Here we don't need an adapter because it's a universal outlet, the source, which is which leads you or connects you to the source, and that outlet, the name of this outlet is the Bhagavad Gita. And every outlet has, 2 or 3 little prongs, little holes where the prongs go. Let's say there are 2. Generally we see 2. Only in big electronic devices you have to have the third one, that grounding one. But otherwise you have 2 little holes in each outlet. And so too this Bhagavad Gita is an outlet with 2 main trajectories that help you to connect with the source. One is called Brahma Vidya. Brahma Vidya means the teaching that expounds, elucidates the oneness of everything and reveals the fact that you who thought were alienated from the whole are indeed one with the source, are indeed one with the whole, and the whole being nothing but Bhagavan. You are connected to Bhagavan, nay, you are Bhagavan. So that is the first, whole in this two whole outlet. And what is the second one? The second one is a treatise on how to get there, a way of life, Brahma Vidya, and then Yoga Shastra. Yoga Shastra means the study of how to lead a lifestyle that is in keeping with the goal of understanding and assimilating this oneness, this limitlessness, this truth of who you are, how to get there. Because it's easy to say you are Bhagavan. What does that do for me? Nothing, because the first thing I have is a disagreement. My hand goes up. I said, no, I'm not Bhagavan. I'm nothing but Bhagavan. I'm everything else. I'm everything else but Bhagavan. I can't be Bhagavan. How can I be Bhagavan? Bhagavan is all pervasive. Bhagavan is all. I am small. Bhagavan is God. I at best am odd. Bhagavan is the cause. I am at best because. So how can I be the cause? I can't be Bhagavan. And so therefore, the very fact that one is, incredulous at best when this knowledge is presented shows that there is a resistance or a block to this knowledge. And so therefore there is some way I need to prepare myself to get there. So the second, hole in this universal outlet called the Bhagavad Gita, which connects one to the source, is what? Is the way of life called Yoga Shastra. So these comprise the two topics in the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Vidya, the knowledge of Brahman. Brahman means that limitless truth of oneself as Bhagavan, the interconnectedness of everything, and that everything is resolved into one thing, which is the self, which is you. And so, and that self, upon that self is projected the concept of everything. All names and forms ensue from this self and are sustained by this self and resolve into this self, not the self that is whining all the time. That is the self from the standpoint of the body, mind, sense complex. But here we are talking of the self as Chidatma, consciousness. So it is sustained by that consciousness. Just like every wave comes out of the ocean, is sustained by the ocean, resolves into the ocean. And from the standpoint of the ocean, the wave has name and form. So, and the wave is not an independent entity. So too this entire Jagat is just a projection of this consciousness. So that is Brahma Vidya. And you are that consciousness. You are that Bhagavan. That is Brahma Vidya. And then we have what is called the Yoga Shastra, meaning how to get there. How do I get there? Because I'm incredulous. I don't understand all this. And I want this, yes. But when I look at myself, who are you? 5 feet so many inches tall. Who are you? I'm the son of so-and-so, daughter of so-and-so. Who are you? I'm the brother and sister of so-and-so. Who are you? I am the CEO of this particular company, or I'm wanting to be the CEO of this particular company. Who are you? I'm bald. What does bald mean? Bald means I'm defining myself but with the help of a non-existent bunch of hair that I don't have. That is why I define myself as bald. I'm old. I'm young. I'm a man. I'm a woman. Or I'm in between. I'm transgendered. And then what else, And sometimes, they don't even, there's a new, what is that? There's a new, 2, 3 new statements. Gender fluid and gender queer. All these things are there. So I'm this, I'm that. And all these identities based on certain, dharmas or attributes of the body-mind complex. So, or one's occupation, one's relationships, sister, brother, father, mother, son, spouse, grandfather, grandchild, all these things. The whole gamut of relationships becomes an important way of identifying oneself. And then what? Then, we have another identification based on occupation. Who are you? How are you? Usually when we meet somebody, and what's the next question? How do you do? And then, what's the next question? What do you do? Without that, we can't have a conversation. Then that's why teacher, lawyer, this, that, all these definitions ensue forth. And these definitions, ways of defining my identity, become blocks in understanding myself as that which is the truth of everything. Yeah, they become blocks because I am attached or involved to these identities. I'm involved with these identities so much. I'm attached to these identities so much that I'm not able to let go of them. I want to have them, and because they give me a certain security. Yeah, especially certain basic identities like one's gender gives one a sense of security. Not only does your own gender give you a sense of security, but the other people's gender also you need to know in order to have a certain security. And then there is a famous sociological experiment by this sociologist by the name of Garfinkel. And this Garfinkel, what he did, he set up a kind of an experiment. A usual, our usual everyday experience of going to the shop, just a mom-pop store or some kind of a 7-Eleven type shop, where you can get whatever suddenly is needed. And it's open at odd hours. It opens, early, closes late. That kind of a shop in a kind of a middle-sized town. And what he did was he approached the shopkeeper, the owner, and said, got some permission to install a cashier who was very gender fluid and who did not look like either a man or a woman, and everything was just always in between. The hair was long enough, for a woman's style hairdo, and it was, short enough for a man. The clothes were again very gender fluid. Jeans and t-shirt, everybody can wear that. The figure was also very gender fluid. There was very hardly any identificatory characteristics when you look at the body of the person. Because the body was kind of slender, a little slender to be a man, and a little tough looking to be a woman. And the voice was also not too high, for a woman, and not too low for a man. So it was all in between. And then he just put that kind of a gender fluid cashier. And this being like a mom and pop store, there was only one person in the whole store who was in charge of the whole store. And then he just watched and took notes from some kind of an undisclosed location. And what was he recording? He was recording the reactions of the various shoppers who came in and went out in the course of the day. So in the beginning, he found that people did not notice the cashier, because when you go to the shop, you are intent on buying something, you're not going to notice the cashier. When do you notice the cashier? One notices the cashier only when one goes up to pay for something. And at that time, people got mad because they could not tell whether it was a man or a woman, and this was done in the 70s, before the word trans identity was so much politicized, and and had started to have a valid place in discussion of all kinds and decision making, and and on the political arena. Before this was talked about, it was not publicized at all. And so, the people were extremely agitated, he found, the shoppers. And, and they would go, and sometimes they would be so agitated that they would just leave whatever they had purchased. So, the researcher trying to accomplish the fact that if you don't know the gender of the person that you're speaking with, there is this fundamental way in which you yourself get agitated because your own gender is almost called into question. And so gender is something, he concluded, it's relational. One does one's gender in groups, in connection to others, and then one receives a certain validation after contacting others and doing one's gender in a cultural or a social setting. And so why are we talking about this? We are talking about this because there's a certain way in which this this whole way in which one positions oneself with regard to the gender identity, and that becomes like a fundamental identity. A fundamental identity. That's why the names of sannyasis are unisex. And everything ends with Ananda. Yeah, this Ananda, that Ananda, and beyond Ananda, there is one cartoonist who named himself Swami Beyond Ananda. I don't know what is beyond Ananda. So it's like saying beyond limitlessness. But anyhow, I think it's a touch of humor there. So like this, these identities become so entrenched that one is unable to go beyond that, unable to appreciate the truth of oneself, which the Bhagavad Gita, which is like an Upanishad, FYI, has got to teach. The Bhagavad Gita has got something to say, and if I have to listen, I have to be available. And if I have to be available, there is a certain little bit of prep work that needs to be done, and that prep work is called Yoga Shastra. So the two together, these two trajectories, and ways of, coming together to this oneness, namely the first, the dissemination of the knowledge of oneness, and then the identity of the jiva with Bhagavan, the establishment of that, the unfolding of that knowledge side by side with the way of life needed to be conducive to this knowledge, together make the Bhagavad Gita. And so therefore, this is an outlet in which one has to plug into. And I have to be a proper plug. I have to have those two prongs, and the two prongs means the openness to receive the connection, the openness to enter the outlet and to receive the connection with the source. So therefore I have to have that openness to enter the Bhagavad Gita. That is the outlet. And we have a beautiful, saying, a prayer in one of the Upanishad. Tantva bhaga pravisha niswaha samabhaga pravisha swaha. O Lord, may I enter into you. Hey Bhaga, hey Bhagavan, may I enter into you. Pravishani, may I enter into you completely. Samabhaga pravisha swaha. You may you in the form of Om, Omkara here, Omkara Upasana is being talked about. May you in the form of this Om, which is a representation, a pratika of Bhagavan. May you enter into me. It's a very beautiful prayer. So Bhagavan entering into you means what? There is no room for you. That's all it means. Bhagavan being everything. You know, just like that, the dwarf who pretended to be a dwarf, Vishnu pretended to be a dwarf and went and tried to get bhiksha from this egotistical king. And so, and he said, I just want 3 footsteps of land. This is what I want for bhiksha. And the king laughed. Look at you. You are 2 foot 6 inches, and your foot probably is not even 6 inches, and then 4-inch long foot, and 3 feet you want. Take wherever. Suddenly, this dwarf grows. Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu means all pervasive. There is no place where he is not. 1 foot covers the universe, another foot covers the everything. 1 foot covers the earth, another foot covers the antariksha, the whole universe, and the spaces in between. And then he says, where to put the 3rd foot now? And the king knows, the king Bali knows, this is a great blessing to have this darshan, and so says, okay, put the 3rd foot on my head, and he sends him to the Netherland. Not Netherlands. Netherland, Patala Loka. Okay? Yeah. So don't try to, when you go to Amsterdam, don't look for King Bali, because that's not where he is. It's a different Netherland. Nether means the some kind of a understanding of below. That's the whole idea. Below means metaphorically a place of acceptance and surrender. This is what it is. So this all-encompassing knowledge has the power to alter me, provided I have the proper prongs. I have to develop the proper prongs in order to plug into the outlet. That's what I have to do. And it's plugged in simultaneously. It's not like first I will study Brahma Vidya, then I will study Yoga Shastra. No, together it is unfolded. It's a package deal. Together it is unfolded. Very, very beautiful. And so these identities, have to be queried and even given up, suspended in order to gain this knowledge. And so if Bhagavan enters me, this outlet means nothing but entering the source. So if I enter Bhagavan, there is again that I as an entity is one with Bhagavan. So if Bhagavan is everything, where am I? If Bhagavan enters me, again the same thing. This should not be a cause for fright. There's nothing to be frightened about. This should be a cause for a certain, contentment, because one is sick of feeling lonely, being, alone, feeling abandoned. And these insecurities, go in the light of this prayer. Tantva bhaga pravishani swaha, sama bhaga pravisha swaha. This is what the whole thing is. And so, in that same spirit, we pray to enter into the Bhagavad Gita, to enter into this goddess, Ashtadashadhyayinim, this 18-armed goddess. The 18-armed goddess who is ready to receive me. I enter into her through this, small, through this verse 3:21, chapter 3, verse 21. we use the verse as a medium to enter into the Bhagavad Gita and to allow myself, to allow the heat of samsara to be cooled off by entering into this placid and cool Shastra that has the ability to immediately quell the tapa and the papa of daily existence, this daily grind, that is what the whole thing is. So let us just look at the verse, and then we could there's a lot to talk about. Say it's a verse that is very full, and so we will see where it leads us. Yadyadacharati shresthaha tattadevetaro janah sayat pramanam kurute lokastadanuvartate. This is the verse. Yadyad acharati shresthaha. We'll just look at the verse first. Yadyad acharati shresthaha. Achara means actions, behavior. Yadyad means what means what means whatever. So the word whatever in Sanskrit is written as what like that. So that's a particular way of looking at it, particular expression. So yadyad acharati shresthaha, yadyad acharati, whatever a person does. What kind of a person we have to supply. It's not there in this particular, in yadyad acharati. Whatever a person does, and who is this person? The person here is given an adjective, an epithet, shresthaha. Whatever a shrestha does. Shrestha means an exalted person, an important person. Shrestha is not riffraff. Yeah, Shrestha means a very important person. So, yadyat, whatever acharati does, an important person does, tat, that alone, and tat eva, that alone, itaro janaha, itaraha janaha, the another person also follows. Saha here means that Shrestha. It refers to Shrestha, not the itara jana. Saha means that Shrestha, he or she, yat pramanam kurute, whatever they set down as a series of ideals that govern their actions or their behaviors. So, however they behave, and the behavior is not bereft of beliefs. So, whatever their beliefs are, whatever is fueling their actions, whatever the thinking is which fuels their action, sayat pramanam kurute, that is the meaning of the word pramana here, is whatever is causing them to behave in certain ways. Sayat pramanam kurute, lokaha, here the praja, the whole gamut of people, not just in one country, but in the whole universe. Lokaha, whatever kinds of people, wherever they are. Loka also means world. So the people in the whole world. Or we can even say the world of people. Anuvartate, and here it's a collective singular. Janaha, collective singular. Lokaha, collective singular. People. So people is, plural by nature. So like that, it's singular, but it's plural. So it's like that, it's singular, but we refer to a body of, individuals known as people. Janaha, people, same thing. And so here it's a collective singular. So lokaha tad anuvartate. That's why it's in the singular. So the people also follow. So everyone follows. What do they follow? The Shrestha. Shrestha means what? An important person. So the important person is worthy of being followed according to the people. And whatever the important person does or believes, or the belief which powers the actions of the important people, along with their actions and the beliefs, are taken up by everyone else. Yeah, very interesting verse. Very, very interesting verse coming right in the middle of the third chapter. It comes in the third chapter as a and I'll talk about its placement little later. It's a very, very important, turning point, as a turning point to uh, to to take on what is called a certain agency, because this verse is offered to Arjuna by Bhagavan Krishna. And Arjuna has got a crisis of agency. And a crisis of leadership is a crisis of agency. The crisis of leadership is a crisis of agency because I don't know what to do. I don't know where to turn. I don't know who to go after. I don't know where I should look. And so therefore, it's a crisis of sorts because it is having to do with the gamut of actions that are there in front of me, to which I have access, but those actions seem to be fraught with pain, sorrow, fear, and therefore I don't want those actions. But then what do I do? This is what, in a way, is a crisis. It's a crisis of identities as well as a crisis of leadership, especially if one is in a leadership role. And if one is not in a leadership role, it's still a crisis because, whatever I do may impact, and frequently does, others around me. And so who do I follow? How do I go about it? And so, Arjuna has a crisis of agency because he's confronted in this very difficult and horrible war. What is this war? An unwanted battle, a battle of egos, very, very unwanted battle where he is, forced to go against what he calls his own people. Drashtvevam swajanam Krishna. Swajanam, that is the thing, that same jana, that swajana, my own people, seeing them. Yuyudsam samupasthitam. Here they are all present for this battle. Sidanti mama gatrani. I become feverish and my hands and legs are shaking. I have come under a crisis. I'm having a panic attack because all logic tells me that one should not fight one's own people. Everything in the world is telling me that I must not go against my own people.